Kate here for a very exciting announcement, and that is the return of Cloak and Dagger Christmas. This is the third year I will be hosting Cloak and Dagger Christmas, and I was really pleased that the co-hosts from last year have accepted again. So that's Carolyn from Carolyn's Reading Rambles, Mel from Mel's Bookland Adventures, and Kate from the Novel Nomad. These ladies all love mysteries, and there is a lot of common ground in our mysteries that we like, but then it's neat also to see kind of where our mystery tastes diverge. So I think between the four of us, hopefully we'll be able to give you a good, solid, sturdy amount of recommendations for mysteries that we just think are incredibly worth your time. And this year, I cannot take credit for the format of the challenges. Mel, I mean, we all knew Mel was clever, okay? But it's just reaffirmed here again. As soon as Mel suggested this, I loved it. So we were pondering what to do for challenges, which I will say, you know, before I go into these, and I just want to put it out there that the challenges are there for fun. They're there to make Cloak and Dagger Christmas more fun for you. But if you are not usually a mystery reader, if you read one mystery short story, one mystery book, you know, a mystery audiobook, anything, you are participating in Cloak and Dagger Christmas. So I just wanted to put that out there. But for those of you who would like a bit more of a challenge, I will tell you about what we have picked this year. And as you know, just it should go without saying, you can of course double up for challenges. You could even, I think, maybe find a book that would work for all of these challenges. So without further ado, Mel thought it would be really fun for us to have Christmas carols as prompts and kind of go from there. So we have 6 Christmas carols that we have picked, and we thought that picking 3 of them would be a fun way to participate. So you have 6 options, kind of like choosing electives, and you can pick out 3 of them to qualify for participating in the challenges. So the first challenge is O Tannenbaum, and for each challenge, for each Christmas carol, I will link down below my favorite renditions of those Christmas carols. So even if you know it's the 1st of November, you're probably not ready to listen to Christmas music, but you can kind of come back to this later when you are wanting to listen to Christmas music and listen to these. And O Tannenbaum is the German version of O Christmas Tree. And Kate from the Novel Nomad came up with the idea to read a translated work. I myself have read 0 translated mysteries. I've read mysteries written by authors from English-speaking countries or authors that are bilingual and write, you know, English mysteries, but I have not read any translated ones. So instead of recommendations for this one, I will tell you about the 2 that I am planning on reading, and they're by the same Japanese author. He is referred to as the Stieg Larsson of Japan, and these 2 plots just sounded so compelling that I wanted to pick these up. And so the first one is called Under the Midnight Sun, and the author is Keigo Higashino. And this plot sounds really interesting, where there is a murder victim right at the beginning of the book. And the detective picks out a prime suspect right away, but then doesn't have enough evidence to pin on him. And then eventually over time becomes intrigued by the son of the victim and the daughter of the prime suspect, and apparently follows them for around 20 years. And that to me sounded really intriguing, kind of thinking that they picked the wrong prime suspect and then still not knowing for a long period of time who was guilty of the crime. The second book I want to try by Keigo Higashino is The Name of the Game is Kidnapping. So apparently someone is kind of gypped out of a job, and because of that decides to take revenge by kidnapping this person, and so plots it out very precisely how they will go about it. I really have not read much Japanese crime fiction, so I'm really intrigued. And just like, you know, Scandinavian crime is a big thing, I think Japanese crime is many bestsellers in Japan. So I'm really excited to dip into that subgenre of mysteries. The next challenge is I Saw 3 Ships. And this means read a book in a location that you don't usually read in. So if you usually read books set in America, pick a different country. If you usually read them set in England, pick a different country, etc. And I will link down below. I love the Nat King Cole version of this and the Julie Andrews version of this. They're both really beautiful. The books that I want to recommend you, the majority of mysteries that I read are definitely set in the UK. So I will, try to help you branch out a bit if those are the majority that you also read. The first is The Dry by Jane Harper. This is a series that has kind of made its rounds on BookTube, but it is for a reason. It's so excellent. Aaron Falk is the detective, and he's kind of a loner, doesn't have much of a life, and in The Dry he comes back to his hometown, and after there's been a horrendous crime, and the person who has been declared guilty, just some things aren't lining up for him. And so over the course of some very pacey couple of weeks, you find out what it is. It really treads the line between thriller and mystery, and it's just was one of the most exciting books I've ever read. Next on the list is Shinju by Laura Jo Rowland. So this is the only one of the series I've read. I read it at the beginning of the year before the mystery book slump of 2019, and I really enjoyed it. And it is very fast-paced. Again, this one treads the line between thriller and mystery, and it just follows Sano Ichiro, who is a new detective, and there is what looks like a Shinju or a lover suicide, and he has to investigate this. And because of a lot of the kind of cultural norms then that really hinders his investigation, with people higher up in society not being held to the same standards, and it was just really interesting, and I definitely highly recommend it. And the third one I want to recommend for I Saw Three Ships is This Rough Magic by Mary Stuart. I think this will go down as my favorite Mary Stuart. It takes place in Corfu. And Mary Stuart, what I love about her is that she has a little bit of a lot of things in her books. She has some romance, she has some mystery, she has some travel, and all written so beautifully and paced so well, especially this one, which also includes a fair amount of humor and dolphins, in case you are wanting a book with dolphins. So I definitely recommend This Rough Magic. A woman goes to visit her sister and have this nice vacation in Corfu, and then happens upon a body on the beach. Because it is Mary Stuart, it's not going to be, it's a safe space, Mary Stuart books. And I definitely recommend Mary Stuart's books. And then I also want to recommend The Firebird by Susanna Kearsley. This one involves some travel to Russia. Our main character of Nicola can, when she touches objects, she can instantly get visions of the memories that this object has, of other people that have owned the object. And it's a really, really fascinating look into that. And she travels to Russia and finds out backstories of people who own this one object. What I will say, though, I should preface this, though, you will get the most out of this, though, if you read before this The Shadowy Horses and then The Winter Sea. There's different characters that you're going to see in other books, and that you'll get to know later on, that you'll be happier if you've read those two before. So it's kind of a loaded recommendation, but I do really love all three of those books. The next prompt is Silent Night. And so this is an unknown adversary, or a story full of secrets. So there's a lot of mysteries that can qualify for this, and it's just a really fun challenge. So I hope you enjoy it, and I will just give you some recommendations for that now. And the first is The Window on the Square by Phyllis Whitney. Phyllis Whitney is an author I'm only just now dipping into, but I'm really, really excited about her. She is fairly similar to Mary Stuart, except maybe heavier on psychology in the two books that I've read from her. So I need to read more before I can have a really established opinion. But The Window on the Square is a bit of the Jane Eyre trope, where there's a young woman who comes into a house to work with the children in the house, and there's lots of secrets and mysterious things happening. And so then, referencing Jane Eyre, I would also like to recommend Jane Eyre. So there's such a wide range of what can qualify as a mystery, and Jane Eyre definitely does. In case you don't know, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte is the story of the title character, Jane, and it's sort of just this piece of her life and what happens to her. And after she leaves the finishing school that she was raised in and has taught in for several years, she is hired at Thornfield Hall. And when she gets there, there is a lot about it that perplexes her and confuses her. It's so gothic and atmospheric. Jane is one of my favorite protagonists ever, and it's an incredibly, incredibly approachable Victorian novel. I kind of think it's the gateway Victorian novel, and I definitely recommend it. The next recommendation for the Silent Night prompt is Shake Hands Forever by Ruth Rendell. Ruth Rendell is one of my all-time favorite mystery authors, and this is a fabulous one about a husband whose wife has died and he does not seem grieved about it. He does not seem sad, upset, concerned. So of course, Inspector Wexford is on the case and wants to figure out what's going to happen. What I love is the longevity of the investigation in this. So much like Under the Midnight Sun that I talked about, it takes a long time for Inspector Wexford to pin the crime on the guilty party. The Inspector Wexford series is a series that you can just dive into whatever book you want. There are little details about the lives of Wexford's daughters, their personal lives, or Mike Burden, who is his partner, kind of his personal life, but I don't think it would detract from your experience to kind of hop in the middle. I have certain favorites in the series, and this is a favorite, and I think you would be fine just going in with this one. The next one that I wanted to recommend is Birds of a Feather by Jacqueline Winspear. This is the second in the Maisie Dobbs series, but since the first Maisie Dobbs is fairly anticlimactic, and if you want kind of a real mystery to sink your teeth into, I actually would recommend starting with this one if you're new to mysteries, because Maisie Dobbs, the first one, which is titled Maisie Dobbs, is really a backstory for Maisie, for you to get to know the character well. So I think it would actually be okay to start with this one. And the reason I picked it for the Silent Night prompt is that there is definitely an unknown adversary. There are these three young women who have a certain connection that Maisie has to figure out, and their bodies have all been found. And so there is a fourth young woman, and Maisie needs to figure out who this adversary is before the life of the fourth young woman is taken. And I definitely recommend it. I love the Maisie Dobbs series. It starts out right after World War I and then goes on all the way through World War II. And I think it's still we're still in World War II in the series. I'm several books behind, so not quite caught up, but I don't want to run out of them because it will be very sad when I do. Next on the list is In the Bleak Midwinter, and I definitely want to recommend the Julie Andrews rendition. It's so beautiful. But for In the Bleak Midwinter, it's a little bit obvious for that prompt. It's a story set in a cold climate, or one that makes your blood run cold. So several ones for this. The first is Mary Barton by Elizabeth Gaskell. I'm sneaking those Victorian novel recommendations in there, aren't I? So Elizabeth Gaskell has written a really compelling book, and it has a really interesting plot, and I am so impressed. You know, it's her first novel, and she puts a lot of social issues in here, but there's something really dramatic that happens about halfway into the book. I don't want to give any spoilers, but it definitely deserves to be a recommendation on this list, and I definitely recommend it if you've enjoyed any other Elizabeth Gaskell books. And then the other one I want to recommend is Still Life by Louise Penny. This is the first in her Three Pine series. And some people label it as a cozy, and there's so many different connotations that go with a cozy, but I think in general, most people think more lighthearted. But it has a cozy setting, but it's extremely literary and psychological. It's a really special and unique series. And Armand Gamache, I mean, I just feel so warm just talking about him. He is the main inspector in this series, but you really do get to know him so well throughout the course of the series. And this first book, and sometimes the first book in a detective series isn't really going to hook you that much. But this one, I read it and I wanted to read the rest of the series right away. And it really, it does, the cozy elements it does have is just really delicious food being mentioned and cozy houses. So it has the backdrop of coziness, but then some really interesting and compelling plots. Not that cozies can't be compelling and interesting. It just has its own unique vibe to it. And the next one I want to recommend for In the Bleak Midwinter is Wildfire at Midnight. This is another Mary Stuart mystery, and this one is set in the Isle of Skye, so way northern UK. And this one is really intense for a Mary Stuart. It's not quite up there with My Brother Michael, but it's really got kind of a gothic feel to it. There's a kind of chase scene in the fog, and it starts out where our protagonist, who of course I've forgotten her name, but she shows up at this hotel to have some rest and respite, and it becomes clear very soon into her stay at this hotel that rest and respite is not something she will be getting while staying here. The game is afoot, and she needs to figure out kind of what on earth is going on and what is happening. And then my last recommendation for In the Bleak Midwinter is Her Royal Spyness by Rhys Bowen. This is such a marvelously fun series, such relaxing reading, full of humor. If you love kind of the larger than life feel of the Jeeves and Wooster series, I definitely recommend this. And it starts out in a colder climate. It starts out in Scotland, in a castle, where our main character, Georgie, her sister-in-law, is too cheap to have, many fires going. So she's just kind of cold in this castle all the time. Eventually it does then the story moves to London, and Georgie has title, and her family is kind of, has rank and all of that, but they've run out of money. So she has to figure out a way to get more money. And I have loved following along with this series. I think I've read 6, and I definitely need to read some more in the series. The next challenge is I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day, and this is Read a Mystery Involving Christmas. The song that I will link down below is a really special one. It has Ed, this is so bad, he plays the grandfather on Gilmore Girls. Anyhow, there's this amazing rendition. He is with the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and is narrating the story of I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. I kind of tear up just thinking about the origins of this song, but I don't want to tell it. I want you to experience the magic of this video if you're going to watch it. And as he's telling the story, it's kind of, there are these interludes of the choir singing I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. It's so beautiful. It's such a special video, so I would definitely check it out if you would like to learn the history of that song. And the mysteries involving Christmas I want to recommend are Winter House by Ben Gutterson. This is a really fun middle grade mystery where this girl, her parents tell her like very last minute that she will not be spending Christmas with them, and she goes to this hotel in kind of this snowy wonderland called Winter House and makes a friend very soon, and it becomes clear right away that there are some mysterious people staying at the hotel, and it's just so fun to see the two of them kind of traipsing around the hotel, figuring out clues, and it was a really just like very fun, quick middle grade read with a lot of a very fun spirit about it. So I definitely recommend that. And then I want to recommend Mandy by Julie Andrews Edwards. And this is one that I keep meaning to reread every Christmas, and I still haven't gotten to it. So here's hoping I will finally reread it this Christmas. This is written by Julie Andrews, but when she wrote it, she was then married to Blake Edwards. So she has it under the pen name of Julie Andrews Edwards, but it is about this orphan named Mandy who lives in an orphanage. And then one day she decides to climb over the wall by the orphanage and happens upon this abandoned cottage in the woods, and over time she starts fixing it up, but she starts receiving notes from someone thanking her for fixing up the cottage, and she doesn't know who it is, and it's just a really sweet, charming story, and it ends around Christmas time, and I definitely recommend it. And then The Adventure of the Christmas Pudding by Agatha Christie. This is a short story or maybe a novella, but it is about Hercule Poirot when he's staying with some friends, and there is a very significant thing left in the Christmas pudding, and Poirot has to figure out the details and trace things. It's not going to take up much of your time, and it's so fun. It's Christmassy. It's mysterious. I just love it. And I think I'll probably just reread it again this year. And then An English Murder by Cyril Hare. This is a really excellent, so sometimes when you have mysteries that are about Christmas, it's too like narrow of a subject and it feels very forced. But the author did this really well. I think this came out in the 50s and then they've republished it. And it's your kind of country house murder mystery. And it's so pacey. I think it's less than 250 pages. And I just found myself really compelled as I kept reading. And I am really harder to please with Golden Age mysteries. And I loved every second of this book. It packed such a punch and it's Christmassy. It's mysterious. Again, so much fun. And then the final prompt is Come Thou Long Expected Jesus. And this is read a mystery you've been wanting to read for a while. So I don't have any recommendations for this because I don't know which mysteries you've been wanting to read for a while. I have some that I have and I definitely thought of immediately when we decided on this prompt. Don't forget to use the hashtag Cloak and Dagger Christmas on here if you're going to put up videos, or on Instagram if you are on there. I cannot wait to see what everyone is going to read. And I almost forgot, we have a group read this year. So notice how I talked about Phyllis Whitney earlier. So for those of you who are fans of Mary Stuart, Daphne du Maurier, and Susanna Kearsley, you should try Phyllis Whitney in case you haven't. And we are going to be reading The Trembling Hills, which is about, again, protagonist's name, if I haven't recently read it, it escapes me. But she travels to San Francisco and she knows there's some history with her family in San Francisco. She doesn't know what it is. And I love reading a book set in San Francisco because I don't think I've read anything in San Francisco. I've only, I don't think I have. Very much looking forward to reading this. I hope you'll join us in reading it. You can check at your library. They might have it. There's also an ebooks available of it. And if you're having trouble getting a hold of it new, I know the Book Depository did have it on at the time that I'm filming this. You could also try Abe Books and you might be able to find it that way. I hope you're able to get a hold of it if you are wanting to read with us. And I will be back for another video soon.